Buying my first investment property has been one of the hardest financial goals I've ever chased, and honestly, I almost got it wrong. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly where I am at right now on that journey, including a deal that looked perfect on paper but completely fell apart at the last minute for me. The price was right, the location was exactly where I wanted it fit my budget, until I realized that the interest couldn't be fixed, and suddenly numbers stopped making sense to me. That failure forced me to take a step back and really understand why I want to buy a property, what type of property actually fits my goals, and how much truly I need upfront. Not just for the loan, but for the taxes, maintenance, and renovations as well. Now I'll share how I'm saving for the upfront costs, how I survey properties, and what it really takes to move from just casually looking around and not pulling the trigger or going in recklessly to actually making the deal happen with responsible decision making. If you're serious about buying your first property and want to avoid expensive mistakes, do follow along. This video is for you. I hope you learn a thing or two. Please use this for educational purposes only, and if you find value in it, do stick along. Now, I want to go into the first thing I mentioned in the introduction, which was my previous deal that failed or didn't went through. And then I'll bring you along what are the processes that I've went through to really properly plan to buy my first investment property, and also where I'm at now and what are the next steps I'm going to take. So this will be probably a first part of my real estate buying journey, and I want to bring you along and also document here in my YouTube channel the journey I had. So the previous deal that failed or didn't went through was because, just like anyone else, I was scrolling through a portal, a real estate portal, and I was trying to look for properties that fit my budget and in a place that I really want to buy into. Now, before I move deeper into this context, I want to share with you again that I live in Malaysia, and hence some of the terminologies and the policies and the kind of jargons that I will use will be specific to a Malaysian context. Now, if you're watching from Singapore, the UK, the US, I think all of these things might still be applicable to you. However, some of the jargons and policies might be slightly different. However, I believe the theories can all be translated, and the things that I've been doing, I believe, have been adjusted to fit any kind of geographic context you might have. Okay? So, to repeat again, I saw a property on a portal that fit my budget and fit the location that I wanted to buy into. It was very close to my current residency, and hence I thought as an investment it would be a very good idea. I can go over if anything breaks or anything happens, I can just pop over and it'd be super simple for me to maintain as a landlord. So just like anything, I negotiated the deal, and I truly believe that everyone should negotiate for their deals, whether it be monetary, whether it be about timeline, when do you have to close the loans, whether it be about fixing things or renovating things. Sometimes in old property, you have a not so good kitchen stove or something like that, or like the cupboards are creaking or something. You can negotiate with the seller to get those things fixed and write them on black and white on a paper and agree on the price, right? For me, I negotiated everything and I agreed on a price with the seller. We were both happy and we wanted to get the deal done. Everything fits my criteria, and I was ready to just get it sorted out and start getting into the renting side of things, which is a whole different story. However, the deal broke through because of several factors. First is, I believe I wasn't prepared fully on the upfront costs. Now, in Malaysia, I think we're already very blessed about this, but in Malaysia, you need 10% down payments for any property. Your first two property can be 10% down, 90% loan. I know in other countries, it could be slightly different, but in Malaysia, we're blessed with that fact that you only need 10% of the property to actually buy it. Now, no one actually said you needed 18%. So if you really want to buy a unit, where I will go into more detail later, you actually need about 18 to 20% of the capital of the property that you want to buy. So before you can actually put a trigger. So let's say you want to buy a 200k property, you need about 40,000, in this case ringgit, to be ready to pull the trigger. The second thing that caught me off guard and became a deal breaker was the fact that I couldn't waive my stamp duty. Stamp duty are like taxes and things that happen, when you sign your SPA, your sales purchase agreement, and your loan agreements. And they can amount to quite a significant chunk of change, and having to be able to waive it is a very big blessing that is offered by the governments. But I realized from the government's point of view, they only offer it to residential titles. Now, I was looking at a very old property, and it was a commercial title, and it was a commercial without HDA. And for those who don't know, in Malaysia, we have something called the Housing Development Acts. I think around 2005, we had a lot of service apartments popping up in Kuala Lumpur, and a lot of them are built on commercial land. However, they put these HDA guardrails for developers to not abandon projects and hence make it applicable for people to actually live into it and also get tariffs that are beneficial for residential use, which is cheaper ultimately because, of course, you consume less electricity, you consume less water as opposed to a commercial business, right? So this HDA agreement is very, very important. And without it, it's a commercial unit, and in the eyes of the bank, it's a commercial unit. In the eyes of the government, it's a commercial unit, and hence you can't get the stamp duty because they don't see it as a property. Now, of course, there are much more nuance. There are a lot of very confusing loopholes that you can go through, but on paper, this is how I understand it. Now, the third thing, other than the stamp duty and the upfront cost, was the interest. The interest couldn't be fixed by the banker. And that was a pretty big deal breaker for me. The interest that was offered for a residential unit was about 2 to 3% at that time when I was interested to buy. And if it's a commercial unit, the bank sees it as somewhat like a shop lot, right? They don't see it as a house. And hence it's much more riskier if you loan money to a business rather than a individual with a steady income, for example, right? So it went from 2 to 3% to about 4 to 5%, right? And this doesn't seem like a very big jump. 1 percentage point, how bad could it be? But the way that interest works for housing, that's a very, very big jump. And in terms of the interest that you have to pay for your property, it would go super high up, and it messes up my ROI, and it messes up my savings, and I wasn't earning that much back in the day when I was looking at this property, so I think it would have strained me even further. Now, I have no regrets in saying no to that deal because it doesn't make sense to me, and I kind of went back and forth with the agents talking about, I need it in writing, I need more assurances before I pull on this deal. But I guess because it was such a cheap deal, the agents didn't really pay too much attention to me, or they didn't take me seriously, and hence they're asking me, this is the standard, everyone in the market is doing it, why are you making it so difficult? And I was really bothered with that, and I want everything in writing, and I thought it was fair to do so. But in retrospect, I think I had to work with them in a more professional manner and try to find a middle ground that works for both of us, because I kind of understand that they're dealing with other customers as well. But I was a little bit pissed, to be honest, and rightly so. The seller was pissed because it took months for me to kind of go back and forth with this agents, and the seller just told me, it's off. I don't want to sell to you anymore. I'd rather wait for another buyer who's more serious. And it's a reality check, but I'm thankful. I learned a lot about all of these things. If I never went through this process, I wouldn't have learned any of this. And I think people should try to get into deals, try to speak to people, try to get uncomfortable a little bit, because it was a little bit uncomfortable speaking to so many different stakeholders. But you learn and you move forward. So now I go into the gist of things in explaining where I'm at now, what are the stages I have already taken in order to move forward in my real estate buying journey, and how I'm going to buy my first property. Again, I'm only at the stage where I'm still currently looking, I'm still saving up. I'm currently in the stage of looking at properties, trying to find another gem that I want to close in on and also negotiate. But before I go into all of that, I'll save it for another video. But before that, surprisingly, if you keep following me through this video, there are a lot of steps you need to do even beforehand. And these are things that people usually tend to miss out, and then they get shocked, when they have hidden costs that they have to pay, when they don't know what the purpose of the property is, when you get your keys, what is next, things like that. So these are things that I believe are necessary before you buy your first property, but of course take them with a grain of salt, do your own research, educate yourself, and just have a gander and see if it works for you. So the first step I took was I understand the why on why I wanted to buy a property, right? I always do this for everything I do. Understanding the why is very, very important. What is the purpose of the property? Is this property going to be for investment? Is this property going to be for own stay? What type of properties do you want? Do you want a landed house? Do you want a service apartment? Do you want a studio unit? How big of the property do you want? You kind of have to have an idea in your head, and you have to have 3 factors that are really important to you. For me, what is really important to me at this stage for rental property in this case is ROI. Make sure that it is only taking about 10% of my income. In any case, if I don't rent it out, I need to take the hits, for a few months. It only takes up 10% of my income, and for me that would be okay to sustain, right? So that has to be a caveat for me. And the third thing is, of course, location, right? I want to buy a place where it's in a good location. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can scout out for good locations here, specifically to Malaysia, but again, could be used in any other of your countries to determine whether or not it's the right property for you. Now, these 3 factors I mentioned in my previous videos, I always like to keep things very lean at 3 points that I look at, so I'm not at risk at under planning or over planning. Some people over plan and then take no action. I want to have just 3 guardrails that are there for me. So again, back to the thing, purpose of the property, it's for rental. Type of the property, I want an apartment or a condominium. Here we call it condominiums or service apartments in Malaysia. I want a good ROI. I want it to be within 10%, 10 to 15, let's say. That's where I'm comfortable at for my income in terms of my mortgage. And also I want it to be in a decent enough location, at least something that I'm comfortable with moving forward. Now, moving on, I did mention about 10% of my budget, of my income that I'm willing to spend in terms of the mortgage, but you need to do some backward calculations to find your budget, right? And this doesn't just mean your mortgage. Of course, this means your mortgage, maintenance, whatever, the toilet goes fully haywire and you need to fix it, or lights start going bust, or the wheel, the tiles start popping up, you never know. Have to save a little bit of emergency just for maintenance. And then there are taxes. I believe taxes are inevitable in any country around the world. Whether you're in UK, Singapore, you have to pay taxes. And in Malaysia, we call it cukai tanah or cukai pintu. And, we usually have to pay it annually. So you have to take those things into account. And also, of course, insurance. Let's not forget about that. And when you buy a service apartment in Malaysia, you have to pay a maintenance fee as well, sinking funds and things like that. So you add all of them up. If they're above your comfortable threshold, you shouldn't go forward with it. You shouldn't even force it per se. You should buy something that you're comfortable with and you're willing to commit to. And it's very important to find out your budget before searching for units and buy within your means. I recommend looking for government incentive schemes as well. In Malaysia here, we have first home buyer schemes. We have rumah whips, which are cheaper housing that are subsidized by the government for developers to build for Malaysians as well. There are many different things that you can leverage in Malaysia and believe in your respective countries as well, that you can take advantage of, and house ownership is always one of the major incentives for governments to push forward. So I'm have no doubts that your government has something for you to own a place, whether it be for own stay or for investments. Okay. Now, moving on, third thing that I want to stress is you need to understand your upfront costs, which is one of the mistakes I made and one of the things that I really want to stress on and I want to really prepare for. I think if you're a Malaysian, a good calculator online, you can go online to search for Maybank upfront costs for housing. It does a very good it gives you a very good calculator where you can put the price of your home, the expected price, and whether it's a new house or a sub-sale property, it gives you a breakdown in terms of, how much estimatedly you need to prepare. And usually it's broken down into stamp duties, legal fees, valuation fees, and also, SPA agreement fees and things like that. And as I mentioned before, if you're buying a residential unit, you can waive the stamp duty. So for me, the first property has to be a residential unit. I didn't mention it at the start in one of my criteria, but I just kept that at the back of my head when I'm searching or filtering out for properties. Okay? So if you're lazy and you don't want to go do that, I think a good rule of thumb, especially for Malaysians, again, this one, do your own research if you're outside of Malaysia, but in Malaysia, it's a good rule of thumb to prepare 18 to 20% of the SPA price or the buying price for the property upfront in order to be very prepared in terms of any sudden cost that comes up. Because, of course, we never know, right? And it's always good to have more than you expected and over-prepare for this a little bit. Okay? And also another thing, on top of this 18 and 20%, you probably want to renovate your place, right? You probably want to put a new slate of paint. Again, this can be done in the negotiations. I could tell the owner, hey, before I buy, could you do a fresh set of paint, because it's looking a little bit old. Maybe you can negotiate something and then he might do it for you. So you also have to take into account renovation costs, maintenance costs, of course. Sometimes the toilets are not working, the water heater is not working, you gotta fix it. So always keep a good 5% of the property value just in case for renovation costs. Now, if you're buying a bare unit, of course, bump that up to about 10%, right? So the upfront cost is usually what staggers or restricts a lot of Malaysians from entering into the property market. But this comes into the most difficult part, which is the fourth step. You need to save for upfront costs and also for your renovation costs. This is the most difficult steps for Malaysians that I know, and it was the most difficult step for me. Because the first step, second step, third step, you can do it technically tomorrow, right? If you really want to do it, understand your upfront costs, finding out your budgets, stating your whys, having a look at the types of properties you want, you can do that tomorrow. And the most difficult part is saving up for the upfront costs and renovations. Now, my advice or what I did was I saved a portion of my income, let's say about 10 to 15% for my upfront costs, right? I didn't want to stop investing in my investments because I really, really value investments, and I know at a young age these investments will compound to something greater and bigger into the future. So I kept my investment portion to about still a strong 30%. So with that settled, I decided to start saving, I think, for my property 2 or 2.5 years ago. And that money, I usually put it in money market funds because they balance between safety and also giving a pretty good interest rate of around 2 to 3%, which is pretty decent. Equally, you can save it in a savings account. If you have a premier savings account, you can get about 2% or even 1 to 2%. I wouldn't recommend it. I think money market funds are equally safe, but the good thing about savings account, you can withdraw them pretty quickly. There are fixed deposits as well that can pay you about 2 to 3% as well. However, they are fixed and you have to wait for the tenure to mature, and then only then you can take out the money, which is a little bit inflexible in my opinion. And if that's the case, you might as well go to money market funds. And then the fourth thing is also dividend stocks. You can also buy into dividend stocks that have very low volatility. I wouldn't recommend this because if you have a goal in mind and you have a kind of set date that you want to buy this property, I wouldn't recommend dividend stocks because you never know how the market would go and it might tank, and when you want to buy the property, you can't buy it. Or if you find it the right property that you want, it would probably hurt you even more to take out that, sell the stocks at a loss, right? So money market funds is the right place for me to save. And once I have that, let's say 18 to 20% that I have, then I can start making offers and then start triggering this discussion of moving forward with my properties. Now, the fifth step is surveying properties. Now, this is also a very important step that a lot of people that I know skip on, but I believe that it is very, very integral that you visit 10 to 15 different properties around the locations that you want. Of course, scout out like 1 or 2, 3 even different locations that suit you. Look at different types of properties. You know, you can look at studio units, you can look at landed houses, semi-Ds, bungalows, if that fits your budget. Any different types of properties. Just have a gander, have a wide palette, and just look around. And that kind of gives you an idea on which areas you actually like, what actually type of properties that you actually like. Do they fit your criteria? Sub-sale, look at new properties as well, if you prefer that. Many different criteria. Just have a look around. Once you hit about 10 to 15, you can start having a spreadsheet, or if you want to do it subjectively with your partner or something, just have a discussion with them and see which properties suit you the best. At the end of the day, it's your decision. Pick based on something that either financially makes sense for you, or if it's more emotional and it's your dream home, or it's your somewhere you want to own stay, then it's more of a subjective decision at that point. For me, in particular, it's a rental property, so numbers overtriumphs emotions for me. So I don't really care so much about the floors and also the view so much. I care more about the numbers. Okay? And, really understand the location. And I believe in properties, if you want to buy it for investment, I think location is the most important thing. Location. Even places that are not really ideal to live in, and people will know what I'm talking about in Malaysia, like Mount Kera, where it's super packed, there is traffic everywhere, and it's not very comfortable to live at, but still, it attracts one of the highest ROIs in that area, and it attracts all of the expats, which then boosts the the number of commercial opportunities there, and hence increases the rentals there significantly, right? So, there are some explanations to why the place has boomed and some explanations on why not, but really do your research on location, right? I did mention that I wanted to look for A tier and above locations, B tier or above locations, and I'll give you an example of what I believe is A, B, C tier. So A tiers are usually places like in Malaysia, again, Malaysia context. A tier locations are like Mount Kiara and Desa Park. This is popularized by a influencer called Iheng as well. I have my kind of own tiers, but I've kind of followed his concept of how to do these tiers. But A tier is basically areas where expats want to live in. There are multiple ways of renting things out. Expats, professionals wants to live there. Malaysians, very affluent Malaysians want to live there. So there are many rental opportunities for people to rent out there. Hence, the rental yield is very high. Second is A tier, where middle to high income Malaysians or also some expats might go to these areas to live at. These include Bandar Utama, we have TTDI here, we have, I believe, Subang Jaya is also A tier at the moment. So there are Petaling Jaya, for example. Many areas in KL, I would say, is B tier. And then there's C tier, where there's usually one market and you're only focused on that one market. I would say C tier would be places that are more locally based. This would be, for example, in my opinion, Shah Alam. Some places in Klang, for example, where people call it their home rather than making it rental investments. Kepong, for example, in Malaysia. So again, these are all my subjective ideas. If you own a property in these areas, of course, all the best to you. But in my opinion, those are the tiers I have for these locations. And I want to look for certain locations that would yield higher in this case. And it's all about numbers. If the numbers don't make sense, then to me it's a low tier area. The numbers make sense and you can get a very high ROI from it, then it's to me a higher tier location. Not to say that any of the locations I just mentioned is not worth staying at. Okay, it's just how the market grades it over time. Now, moving to my last thing, again, I mentioned I haven't made a deal. I haven't progressed into dealing with the SPA, the loan agents. Although I've been through that process before, I've never actually seen it through to the end. So I won't give my advice on that till it actually happens. And I'll bring you, of course, through the journey together with me to learn as well as reflect. But the final step that I'm at right now is making the deal happen. Really trying to decide what is the next step for me moving forward and moving into the offering stage. So now I'm really doing the surveying of properties, 10 to 15 types of properties. I'm still in the midst of saving. I want to take the bonus I get from my job and really move that into the upfront costs, savings bucket I have, and really use it in the future to start making some offers here and there. Another thing that I think is very important to state before I end the video is that there's a 3 months deadline, when you want to sign your SPA. So I think this was something that my partner did recently, where she bought a property and the SPA took longer than expected. The land office delayed, the loan officers delayed, the agents were delaying. It was the end of the year, everyone was celebrating, and eventually she got charged penalties. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. I think we need to protect ourselves better. I think we also have to be accountable and responsible for these penalties. But I think it's very, very important for us to read the contracts and the things that we agreed upon. And before we send anything out, we have to really understand the contract. Ask as many questions as you want, of course. Try to do it in a very professional way and in a pragmatic way that it's a win-win for both parties, right? And I wish everyone the best. If you're planning to buy a property in the future, whether it be own stay or an investment, do follow me along in the journey. I think it'd be a very cool journey. I think it'll be a lot of learnings along the way, a lot of mistakes, of course, but a lot of successes. I think we're all on the right track this year. Start of 2026, we're going on strong. And I want to wish everyone a positive month ahead. I want to wish everyone a positive week ahead. And it's the weekend today. I'm going to sit back, relax a little bit. It's been a tough week at work. I feel like nothing has really stopped, from the day year ended and the year started. I feel like I never took a break, and probably that's not a very good idea, but I'm going to make the most, stay positive of my weekends, and let's go again. Let's try again. Thank you guys for watching once again. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Try to get back to you as soon as I can. Wish you all the best again. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.